Well, hello everybody again, and thank you for joining us for today's BU Professional Development webinar, How to Find the Right Mentor for Career Success. My name is Jeff Murphy. I'm a member of the Career Programs team in the Alumni Relations Office. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Boston University Alumni Association and is offered to our 346,000 alumni around the globe and all of our current students. Throughout your career, Boston University is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. And we aim to do this by providing everybody with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. I know, again, as we said earlier, we've got alumni and students joining us from around the world. We're just so thankful to have all of you participating in this and every program that we offer. So thank you for being here again. Before I introduce today's speaker, just a couple of brief housekeeping notes from me. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni Association website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions that you may have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A function on Zoom. Again, if you're not quite familiar with Zoom, you're going to want to just hover over your screen. You'll see a toolbar pop up. One of the items that you can select is Q&A. Just go ahead, click on that, and then you can type in your question at any point. We're going to make sure to save time at the end to get through all of your questions, or at least as many as we can. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, BU College of Arts and Sciences alumna, Dr. Rose Opengart. Dr. Opengart is a career coach, author, and professor with a corporate and academic background in human resource management. She teaches and coaches and utilizes her passion for work fit and happiness to help people have the most career success possible. She earned her PhD in human resources and organizational development and also holds professional certification in human resources. She's published HR and career articles and also authored a book entitled Find Your Where to help job seekers find the right place for them. The book is available on Amazon now, also in good bookstores. I think we include the BU Barnes & Noble bookstore in that, right, Dr. Rose? I think they carry the book, which is awesome.
At one point it was there. If it's not still there, go and request it.
Yeah, there you go. And you are also the owner of Interviews That Work, and you can find more about Dr. Opengart on her website, interviewsthatwork.com. Rose, thank you again for being here. This is the second webinar that you've done for us. We are so thankful. The first one was awesome. We're glad to have you back. Let me go ahead. I'll stop sharing my slide deck. You can share yours, and then we'll be off and running. The floor is all yours.
Thanks so much. Alrighty, I'm so excited to see that there's people from both sides of the coast, and then I rounded out coming from Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we've got a nice, well-rounded audience today. That's very exciting. And I also noticed, Jeff, that you put the date I graduated. I should have told you to take that off so they don't see how old I am.
Anyway. We do get feedback about that from time to time. Sometimes people don't mind, but thank you for letting me know, and I'm sorry. I apologize.
Although it does give credibility too, I suppose. So why isn't it advancing? Uh-oh, technological difficulties. There we go. All righty. I was nervous for a minute. Things weren't working. So you can hear me? Okay. So
I'm muted. Sorry.
No, I saw you nodding. So I got it. Okay. You can hear me. I assume everyone else can. So I do love talking about career. As an academic, I've always studied career development, and as a career coach, I love helping people find the right job for them. So to talk about mentoring fit right in. I think Jeff covered all these. I just wanted you to know who you were listening to and why I might know something about the topic. So I used to do the hiring for my company when I was in the Washington, D.C. area. So I really love helping people find the right job. And I know what the process is like on the other side, how I looked at resumes and how interviews worked and so forth. So we wanted to start with a poll about what do you hope to learn today, so that I can make sure you're learning what you hoped to today. So you want to learn more about what is a mentor really, or how to choose one and how to ask them, or how to make this relationship successful, or all of the above?
Got about just about 2/3 of the audience that's already weighed in. Do you want to make any predictions about what the most popular answer is going to be?
Well, I'm going to guess that it'll be all of the above, but they may surprise me.
Say a safe bet, but actually this is not turning out the way I thought it would. Let me go ahead and share those results with you so you can see.
50% all of the above, 35, who should I choose? So what this tells me is that most people are pretty sure they know what a mentor is, and they think they know how to make it a good, successful mentoring relationship, but they don't know who to ask, how to ask, and the rest of it. So, all right, that's good. That means I'll go quickly through the first slide. Hey, why isn't it advanced? Are you advancing it for me, Jeff?
I'm not. It's interesting. I wonder if there's just like a delay.
Usually.
I wonder if there's a delay on your end. When I actually, it was just a second ago, but when I was hovering, oh, maybe it's when you do it. When you hover over the screen with your cursor, in the lower left-hand corner, I see a little menu pop up, and maybe that's the way to do it instead of using your keyboard. Of course, I'm not seeing it now. There it is. Yeah. There you go.
All right, so I'll go through this quickly, though. Everybody thinks they know what a mentor is, but there's a lot of terms being used these days, thrown around. So I did want to briefly cover this because you hear mentor, you hear coach, you hear sponsor. This is a new one in at least the academic literature. And people seem to know what a therapist is, yet there's a lot of similarities and overlap between the two. So I just wanted to briefly go through what are the differences. All right, that is working a lot better, Jeff. So what's the difference between mentor and coach? And the general consensus is that a mentor does more telling. In other words, you should be like this in the workplace, whereas a coach will do more questioning. How do you feel about when you act that way at work? Sort of more like a therapist. All right. Mentoring is actually a little bit more broad than coaching because coaching tends to focus on a specific area. Like as a career coach, I help you find a job or I help you be more successful in the workplace. Whereas mentoring can really be broadly about how to be successful at work, how to get ahead. Another difference, sponsor is just really becoming popular all of a sudden. And the difference is that sponsor is a little more advocacy and pulling the person along. So whereas the mentor advises the mentee and says, hey, you might want to go network here or there, sponsor might actually take the person by the hand, bring them to a meeting and introduce them or connect them with potential network people. So it's like I said, a little more hands-on, a little more forward thinking, I think. But that's not to say that you can't do these things if you're a mentor as well. So whereas mentors might, that was the example I just gave, mentors make suggestions, sponsors might actually take you. But don't get hooked up on these terms, okay? I wanted to talk about them because they're out there and I didn't want any confusion. But you could do anything you want within your relationship. You can tell your mentor, I want you to introduce me to people. I want you to take me to meet people. So I'm going to use the word mentor for the rest of the presentation today. And it can mean any of these things. But I just wanted to make sure you knew there were differences out there. Okay. So this slide, Jeff may recognize, and if you were in my previous presentation, you may recognize because I talk about knowing yourself before you do your resume, before you go for interviews. Well, guess what? You should really still know yourself before you get into a mentoring relationship because you need to know what you want out of the relationship, what your skills are and aren't in order to pick the right mentor, in order to tell the mentor what you need. So, quick sip of water. Just like I said in my presentation, when you're job hunting, you really should know your job target. What a job target is the job function. In other words, are you going for accounting or marketing or human resources, the industry, as well as the geographic location? And that is because your job search should be focused. You shouldn't just do what I call spray and pray. Well, searching for a mentor should really involve some of the same thinking. you should know what you want, what kind of career you want, or what you need to drive you forward before you find that mentor. Perhaps even the same company, because then who you pick will be so much more helpful to you if you know exactly what you're looking for and what you need and what skills you lack. Because everybody's different. And so you want to know what I need and how the mentor can help me before you find that person. So, what are your strengths? What are your interests? What are your skills? What are your values? When you look for that mentor, you will want someone that has similar values so you don't rub each other the wrong way. But at the same time, you might want somebody with different skills, those skills that you lack. Because if they don't have the skills you lack, how can they help you get them? So think about where this person is geographically, what company and industry this person is. They may be in your company, they may not. But you want to pick the person that is most likely to help you get where you want to go. And if you don't know what you're missing and where you want to go, it makes it that much harder to pick that person. Hope that makes sense. Lastly, you need to know what your goals are. Clearly, you want to be able to tell that mentor what you're trying to accomplish so they can help you get there. So this was also a slide in my last presentation, which I think would be just as valuable for choosing a mentor, because again, you need to know who you are and what you have to offer. So this 2-minute pitch was something that you would tell anybody you're networking with if you meet them at an association meeting, if you meet them in the elevator, that's why it's called the elevator pitch. What to say in a letter, in an email. What do you bring to the party that competitors don't? What's the most important thing you want the person that you're talking to know about you? What are some key accomplishments that you've had? That should be highlighted in your resume. Who are you talking to when you're meeting and giving them this pitch? And think about what a company potentially wants in a candidate. So if you have this 2-minute pitch down, not only is it helpful in your job search, but it's really helpful when you're introducing yourself and trying to pick a mentor, because they want to know who you are and how they can relate to you and how they can help you, but also how you can help them, because we always talk about mentoring in a way that the mentor can help the protege, the more experienced person with the person that's coming up in the world. But actually, oftentimes, the mentor can get as much out of the relationship as you do. In fact, you don't even have to be like this. You could be colleagues on the same level and still mentor each other, because you may have some things to offer the other person. They may have some things to offer you, and you can learn from each other. So I think being able to answer these questions and to have this pitch will help you in multiple ways in both your job search and in finding a mentor. I'll leave that screen up for another couple seconds in case you're trying to write it all down. So many of you wanted to know how to choose a mentor, and that is a very overwhelming thought. I can see why it would be super complicated to figure out how to do that. So first thing is somebody that's going to be good for your needs, that will help you grow and gain new insights. And again, those last 2 screens were so important, because how do you know who's going to help you grow, who's going to be good for your needs, if you don't know what your needs are and where you're going? So that first piece is very critical before you do the second piece. So here are some things to consider when you're searching for your mentor. How much experience do they have? And what kind of experience do they have? That's just as important as how much, because you want somebody who's going to have wisdom and experience that you want to obtain. What industry are they in? And you may question, why do I keep saying what industry? Well, I can tell you from the hiring perspective that managers and hiring managers like that you have industry experience. And you may say, but Rose, marketing should be marketing, whether it's in the technology field or whether it's in food industry. And to some point, I agree with you, but they want that. They want to know that you're familiar with their industry. So this would be especially good if you're trying to switch industries, find a mentor in the industry to which you're trying to move to. Or in the same industry, it would be super helpful if it's somebody who's more experienced in your industry because they have a lot of connections that they can contact for you and hook you up with. Would age make a difference to you? Perhaps it wouldn't, but it's just one criteria to consider. Gender, and I didn't put race, and it's interesting, in the academic literature there has been a lot of discussion about gender and race and whether or not you should match with your mentor or not. And perhaps to you it doesn't matter, but some of the discussion is around whether mentors always try to make their mentee just like them. And some of them have that habit of doing that. And in some ways that's good, but in some ways it's not. And should the mentee, especially the marginalized mentee, someone who is a minority, for example, emulate everything about their mentor? Well, perhaps not. And all that's doing is reproducing what we tend to see in organizational structures, and that is not enough women and not enough minorities at the high levels. And so the problem that they talk about in the research literature with mentoring is that if you're searching for somebody older and more experienced, let's say you're a woman wanting to get into leadership, well, who are you going to find? Typically, the white male is the one that's been in those higher leadership positions. So you really have trouble finding someone who looks like you to be your mentor. So these are just things to consider when you're looking for a mentor. Think about the gender, the age, the race, and how that might play into the mentoring process. And I'll leave it at that. So here's some questions that you should ask yourself when looking for a mentor. Is this a person I would look up to? Hopefully the answer would be yes, because if it's not, for whatever reason, they're not going to make a good mentor. Am I able to work well with this person? You definitely want somebody that you're going to feel comfortable with, because the mentoring relationship will not be as successful if it's not somebody you can work well with. And how do you know if it's somebody that you can work well with? I think it's great to have a coffee, a chat, a Zoom, something just to make sure it's somebody that you're comfortable with. And you may consider several different people and have a quick chat with each of them to see who you're the most comfortable with. And you know what? You can have more than one mentor, because they might not all have the qualities that you're looking for. And one can offer one thing and another can offer another thing. Can this person guide me toward my professional goals? Obviously, that is what you're looking for in choosing a mentor. Is this person happy in his or her career? This might be something you wouldn't have thought of, but I wouldn't want a negative person who hates their job to be my mentor, because they might talk me out of this career, but you're not going to gain as much in a relationship where the person hates what they do than you would in a relationship where the person enjoys what they do. Does this person have both wisdom as well as connections? And really both are important, because unfortunately, a lot of getting jobs these days and moving ahead in your career really is about who do you know and connections. And yes, you have to have the experience, the ability, and the knowledge, but sometimes getting your foot in the door and meeting the right person really is that tipping point that you need. So in looking for a mentor, I think ideally you want somebody that has the wisdom, but also the connections. Somebody you can look up to, somebody you can be comfortable with and work with, and somebody that's going to help you reach your professional goals. And again, I'm going to say this so many times so the point hits home. You got to know what those goals are before you do this process. Just a little quick joke for you. Mentor? I'm sorry, I thought you wanted a tour mentor. But I'm pumped. One thing that's bad about Zoom is I can't hear if you're laughing or see if you're laughing, but I can see Jeff and he's laughing, so yay. So once you've identified some potential people, how do you ask them? It's so intimidating. It's so scary, right? Well, stop there, and I'll put in the plug that Jeff really wanted me to for BU Connects, because Jeff's going, yay, he's dancing. These are people that have already offered to help. So that, they're willing. That already takes fear out of it, because I know going to approach someone who you're not sure if they want to do this is difficult. BU Connects, they already have people that have been identified and have offered. So all you have to do is look through that. And I think I looked at it, and I think it says what they do, what they majored in, where they are. So you can already start thinking about some of the things we've talked about. But if you don't see somebody at BU Connects and you want to ask somebody else, what do you do first? Well, really, this is not the first step. I lied. The first step is back a few slides and identifying who you need, and then looking LinkedIn. LinkedIn is super for finding people, if not in your own company, finding people in other companies. Are they somebody you're going to be able to answer all those questions to? Now, what do? Now try to schedule a conversation with them. I think we're to the point where people can start meeting in person again. So if you can, I always feel like meeting in person is better, because you can get a slightly better feel than over Zoom. Have lunch, have coffee, whatever's most comfortable for you. And if that's intimidating, then don't do it that way. Do Zoom. But I think face-to-face is better than phone. But if phone is all you can do, it's better than nothing. So schedule that initial conversation. Now, you as the mentee, clearly describe what you're seeking. Because if you don't, then you're leaving it in the hands of the mentor, which, could be good, but you're leaving it up to chance. I think the more that you know what you want and you can tell them what you're looking for, the more you'll get out of this mentoring relationship. So the more you can tell them, the more successful it will be. Kind of like when you're meeting a potential date, potential spouse. The more that they know what you want out of life, the more likely you are to get it. Here comes the therapist background in me. But anyway, confirm your willingness to do the work. What does that mean? Well, here's a quick little personal story. I took my teenager to the chiropractor 2 weeks ago because she asked me for this. She said, my back hurts. I know I have a little scoliosis. Please take me to the chiropractor. So I did. Then the chiropractor gave her some work she needed to do. It's like physical therapy as well. Some stretching she needed to do. Did she do it? No. And she said to me, why can't I just let him do it? And I said to her, darling, with a little frustration in my voice, you have to be able to do your work, your part of it, in between those chiropractor visits, or the chiropractor's not going to be able to do that much. He's going to be limited in what he can do if you don't do your work. Well, it's the same thing here. The mentor can tell you things, the mentor can connect you, but you also have to do your part. And some of that may be working on some skills you need. Some of that may be doing some research on LinkedIn, whatever it is that you need to work on yourself. You need to be willing to do your part as well and let the mentor know that. That will help them say yes to you if they know you're going to do whatever you need to do as well. Also acknowledge and respect the individual's time. And I would do that right from the beginning. When you send them an email, because that's probably how I would initiate the conversation to schedule the first meeting, I would say, here's who I am. Here's what I'm looking for. You seem like a great person. I would love to chat with you about the potential to have a mentoring relationship. I acknowledge and respect that you're busy. So how about we just schedule a 15-minute call for the first time, or 30-minute call for the first time. So right away, they know you're going to be somebody that respects their time. So here is your map that will help you be successful. And what is the map? It's a mentoring action plan. So rather than just say, get that mentor and then let them figure out what to do, I want you as the mentee to take as much control of this process as possible to make sure it's going to be successful. So again, we talked about some of this, but it would be great if you could write this down and maybe just write down the questions for today. And then on your own time, write down the answers so that when you have your meeting with the mentor, you're ready. So what are the skills that you think you need to develop? What type of knowledge do you need to develop? And some of that will probably depend on your goals. So you could do a little gap analysis of yourself and say, here's where I am in my career. Here's where I want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. What do I need to move from here to there? Okay. How will you know when you have successfully enhanced a skill or competency? And this is a really good thing for you to identify, if not to quantify, to at least know that this mentoring relationship has been successful, and to know maybe when you don't need the mentor anymore or you need a different mentor. What activities would help you to develop the most? And this goes back to respecting the time of the mentor. I think the mentor might feel overwhelmed and think this is going to demand a lot of my time. If you call and say, I just need whatever you want to give me, and I need this. If you can delineate what you need and know what you need exactly and how long it will take, I think that will be something that will give the mentor a little framework, structure, and he or she will know exactly what you're expecting, and that maybe it won't take forever. And if there's too much, which are the ones that are most realistic for you to obtain? I'll leave that there for a second so you can write it down.
And Rose, I think we do have your permission to share a copy of this with everybody afterwards, right? So they don't necessarily need to.
Yes.
So people don't need to necessarily worry about copying down everything, because I will email all of you a copy of this for your records.
Okay, perfect. And I'll just go on ahead. So one really, really critical thing as a mentee is that you need to be open to feedback and whatever your mentor has to say. Another little joke. Your advice is very important to me, so I wrote down exactly what I want you to say. It can't work like that. You have to be open to whatever they tell you, because you can't say, help me, but only say good things about me. So let's talk about best practices. And this list comes from not only academic literature, but people who are consultants and have shared what they found, and mentees and mentors who have shared from their experiences as well. There needs to be honest two-way exchange. Going back to that comic a second ago, you really need to let the mentor be open with you. And as a career coach, I've had to have some very difficult conversations with people. And it's much simpler than, stop twirling your hair, which is actually really common. I've had to tell people, you don't smile. And I don't know if you're depressed and you need to look at that, but I wouldn't want to hire you because you seem very negative. And so these are very difficult things for me to say as the coach, and as for a mentor, that would be difficult, but even more difficult for the person to hear. So there needs to be an honest two-way exchange if you really want to grow. Respectful debate on differing views. And, you should have somebody that has the same values so you don't argue at the same time. But at the same time, sometimes it's good to have people from different backgrounds with different views because it challenges you to think differently and grow. Critical assessment of ideas. So in other words, if you as the mentee tell the person, this is what I want, how I want to do something, and they say, well, maybe you should consider something else, just be open to that. So what I mean by a leveling of the power gradient is most likely the mentor is going to be somebody who's more experienced. So it's going to feel like that person has all the power in the relationship. And that really shouldn't be the case, because you as the mentee need to be able to be comfortable enough to say, I don't like that suggestion. Can you suggest something else? Again, respectful and be open to considering different ways of doing things, but you need to be able to say, if you don't agree, you need to be able to feel like you have as much, right to say something in the relationship as the other person. And so a mutual positive regard and openness. If you don't like your mentor or the mentor doesn't like you, it's not going to work. You have to be able to like each other, respect each other, and be able to be honest and open with each other. Respect for limits and boundaries is really, I think, mostly about time, but of course there's other limits and boundaries, especially if you have, let's say, different genders and the mentor decides they can see other benefits to this relationship. Done. Next relationship. Next mentor, I mean. There also should be a commitment to confidentiality. And that is because you want to be able to say whatever you need to say. So you may want to say that up front to your mentor, that I need to talk to you about things that concern me in my workplace, and I need to make sure there's confidentiality. Because if you don't have that reassurance, then you won't feel free to say whatever's on your mind. So at a minimum, you should meet at least 1 hour per month for at least a year. And a year is suggested because the longer term the relationship, the more you'll grow, the more you will learn. The more often you meet, the more you'll get out of it. So I say at least an hour per month, because if it's less than that, I don't think you're seeing the person frequently enough to get anything out of it. Perhaps twice a month would be best. But again, respect the mentor's time and see what he or she has to offer. So I referenced this before. You want a mentor that will help you grow, not make you into a mini me. And this is what's tended to happen in the past. I think mentors realize these days that's not what they're supposed to do. But I think too often, because they realize they've been successful, they should teach you to do everything they did. Well, there's different ways of being successful. And, you know, if this is a person that is maybe in their 50s or 60s, talking to a person in their 20s, there's probably different ways of doing things in the workplace than there used to be. So they need to be just as open to different ways of being successful as you are. You should be. So we may have some, let's backtrack for a second. We may have some people here today or who listen who want to be mentors just as well as people who want to be mentees. And so I'm including this slide for those people, but also just for you for some more tips for what to look for in a good mentor. So really both could appreciate this slide. Whoops, I didn't mean to go backwards again. So willingness to share skills, knowledge, and expertise. They have to be willing to share. I have met some bosses in the past or heard of bosses who kind of felt like they had this attitude that I had to work my butt off to get here and I had to fight hard. You can too. They don't want to help. So that's not a person who's going to be a good mentor. You want someone who's going to help people rise up with them and share all they have to know. You want to be open-minded. You want to be a good listener, compassionate and understanding. You want to be flexible, caring, and supportive. Definitely want to have a positive attitude and be a positive role model. And that goes back to making sure that you pick someone who's happy in their work and their job. You definitely want someone to take a personal interest in the relationship. So when looking, you know, if you ask and they say yes right away, I think that's a good sign. If you have to really beg, that even if they do end up saying yes, that might not be the best mentor because you really want them to take a personal interest. And if you really had to nag for them to say yes, I'm afraid that's somebody who's not going to have the time or really not going to have the positive attitude and interest in helping you. Okay. And obviously you want somebody who's going to provide guidance and constructive feedback. So you want your mentor to give honest feedback, but with tact, because sometimes there are hard things to say. Is the top of it cut off? Well, you get it.
I'm seeing it just fine.
Okay.
Is it cut off on your end? Must be.
They say, what's your weakness in the first slide? Honesty. I don't think honesty is weakness. Well, I don't think. Just a funny joke about being honest. Got to throw in some jokes to what might be an otherwise boring presentation. So we did recommendations for mentors. How about recommendations for mentees? Again, be open to whatever feedback you're going to hear. Oh, I like telling stories because it makes presentations more interesting. So I already told you about my daughter not being willing to do her share. Once when I worked in HR, my boss and I, she was the director of HR, had to give a manager the most difficult feedback. And this, this is sort of mentoring, kind of what you'd call an informal mentoring relationship. There's formal and there's informal. So she, as the director of HR, was getting, well, I heard the complaint and I had to share it with her. Complaints about this manager. The manager apparently was looking not at women's eyes, but at their chest. And it was making people very uncomfortable. So this is sort of a mentoring thing. The director of HR, also a legal thing, had to go and tell this man older than her that he needed to make sure to look at women's eyes. Well, can you imagine how uncomfortable this was for not only her having to give the feedback, but for him having to hear the feedback? So some of this may happen in mentoring relationships. He thankfully accepted the constructive feedback very nicely. It was awkward, but he heard it and he changed his behavior. And if he didn't, he probably would have been fired. But this is an example of how feedback sometimes could be very difficult to both give and receive. So as the mentee, be willing to hear whatever you hear. Willingness to learn and try new things. It sounds obvious, but sometimes people say they want to be mentored and they really don't want to try anything new. Be very engaged in the process. Create a clear agenda. This is where that power differential has to not make you feel uncomfortable. Try to have a little control and say, this is what I need out of this meeting. This is what I need out of this relationship to make sure you get what you need. Must be willing to take action on the advice and suggestions. And I think I've said that a few times, but there's no reason why repetition is a bad thing. Make sure you get that. Was that the last slide? I guess that was. So we had recommendations for mentors, recommendations for mentees, and actually it's 12:40, so that's pretty close to what I was aiming for. Just one more plug for the book here. It's not really about mentoring, but if you're job hunting or if you're looking to move up in your career, I just really want to see people happy in their work. And so everything I talk about, whether it's mentoring or this book, it's show you how to find the right job in the right place. But back to mentoring, questions.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rose. I really do believe how much you care about people being happy, and you've obviously shared yourself and your expertise with our alumni and students around the world. So thank you. A timely question. If we go back to tips for mentees, a question from Helen about managing expectations. And she's wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, I think Helen has seen that, there's a big difference between a mentee asking, please be my mentor versus please find me a job. So in terms of like, maybe it's in the initial outreach, but what advice do you give to mentees about how to, Helen's just wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, that sometimes particularly our younger folks don't maybe realize like what you go to a mentor for and what you don't go to a mentor for.
Right. I think that's a great point. I feel like a mentor can be a lot of different things. So you do need to be clear in what you need. And I talked about that in one of the slides. What is it that you need help with? And if you feel like you know what you need for this job, you just need to get that job. That's different than needing a mentor. You just need someone to help you connect. I think that LinkedIn is superb for that. So when I talk about the job search process, I always talk about how important networking is. So there's several ways. There's LinkedIn, there's association meetings. So for example, if you're looking for a job in human resources, go to Society for Human Resource Management meetings. Once a month, they have a presenter, they have lunch. That's where you go and meet people who are in the position to hire you. Or in LinkedIn, you connect with people who are at that company you're trying to get into. And you tell them briefly about yourself and say, could you let me know if there's any potential jobs now or in the future, because there might not be now, but there could be in the future. And if you talk to a person and you say, can I chat with you for 15 minutes or something on the phone or lunch, if they like you and they don't have a job currently, but they might know someone else who has a job, so they can hook you up with that person, or they might have a job in the future. So the more opportunities you have to talk with people, I think the better off you'll be in networking. And if you really specifically want help at a company, contact as many people as you can at that company and say, hey, I really love your company because, give them a nice reason and say, can you get me a meeting with, so and so? Figure out, using LinkedIn, figure out who you need that meeting with. And if they can connect you with that person, then you can talk with them and hopefully do what I said before. Either they have a job now, or they'll have one in the future, or they can connect you with someone who does. And so that's more of a specific need than a general mentoring relationship. I hope I answered Helen's question with all that.
No, I definitely think so. And okay, you mentioned, the use of LinkedIn to find the right people to connect with. I do want to mention at this point, we've got some amazing webinars in our archive that talk directly about how to go about finding those folks on LinkedIn. I'm also in a minute going to put a link in the chat for the previous webinar that you did, Rose, which I think certainly will be helpful. So I'll share a link for that. But while I'm going to be doing that, I would like you to answer this question. You started out by kind of talking about like, what is mentorship? And I think we kind of assumed based on the poll that a lot of people already had a handle on that. But Jennifer made a great point. She mentioned that mentorship is a new concept for her in her country. It's not that common to have a mentor. Jennifer's wondering, the structure of that relationship. If you comment on that a little bit more. But specifically, do people pay for mentorship? How often should the mentor and the mentee meet? I can't help but wonder if, you talked also at the beginning about the difference between maybe a mentor and a coach, where that might be a scenario where you're paying somebody for their advice.
Right. And you do pay coaches. There are career coaches, there are life coaches. There's also what's called an executive coach, which tends to be for executive level people who have skills but lack more of the interpersonal skills. Coaches generally are paid for. Mentoring is more of a volunteering, I'm willing to help you kind of thing. And what's interesting, I'm assuming from her name that she's from China, and I have done a lot of studying about the collective versus the individual. And I'm fascinated how in China they do everything as a group from kindergarten. I understand that they go to school and they study and they do assignments in groups. So I'm fascinated actually that mentoring isn't a thing, because if they're so group oriented, I would think that people would be more willing to help to be successful as a team, as a group, than in America, we're kind of individual focused. So Jennifer, I think that you should probably be able to find somebody who has a little bit more experience and knowledge than you, and just say, hey, I would love to meet with you once in a while and ask for your help in helping me advance in my career. And like I said in the slides, have a little idea of what you need help with so that you can share that with the person, especially if this is a new concept in your country. You want to make sure they know what you're asking for. So I would just present it structurally, saying, I'd love to meet with you once a month for an hour to ask you questions, for you to help me gain these skills and this knowledge, and perhaps connect me with some people that can help in my career. And the other question was answered about how often.
Yeah, right. And then related, you also talked about sponsors, mentors, coaches, therapists, sponsors. Question, wondering if you can talk about how do you move a relationship from mentorship to sponsorship? This person's heard that it's great to have a mentor, but at the end of the day, sponsors are the people who are really going to help you with your job mobility.
Yes, I think as long as you tell them what you're looking for, and the best thing would be upfront, so that you're not changing anything on them. When you're contacting people to ask you if they'd be your mentor or sponsor, say, here's the things I would really love to get out of this relationship. Knowledge, skills, and I'd love if you could connect me with some people, bring me to your meetings. I mentioned that sponsorship really was a little more direct, like rather than saying you should go meet people in these areas, they take you to meet people in those areas. They connect you with people they know. So I think whatever the term is, I think if you share with them what you're looking for out of the relationship, then if they agree, they would do it. And I love Tiffany's question because I can see it at how to hold the mentor accountable. So it's a good segue, if you don't mind, Jeff, that I'll just skip right into that.
Of course, please go ahead.
If you did outline ahead of time when you met them what you were looking for, I think that helps you hold them accountable because you said it up front. And I think would be fine, not so much to sign a contract like Jennifer had asked, but to outline when they agree. Thank you so much for agreeing. Just to reiterate, here's the things I really hope I can get out of this relationship. So now it's in print and perhaps in an email, but don't make them sign it. That seems a little bit too much. And then if they forget in the future, just say, oh, I'd love to go back to some of those things we discussed initially when we met. And that was this and this. So that's how I think you could hold them accountable and make sure you get everything you need out of the relationship. Sorry, I can see it. So I'll just.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Is it beneficial to have more than one? I did mention that earlier. Absolutely. Because, one person may have something to offer that the other doesn't. And you know what? Getting different perspectives is always a good thing. So absolutely go for it if you can do it.
And Dave made a comment in the chat, and Dave, feel free to let me know if I'm kind of misinterpreting what you're asking, but Dave's making the point that, mentoring in a lot of ways seems like something that the older generation might do for the younger generation. And so that it's really targeted at, brand new professionals, recent grads, but that we don't necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about older folks who might be looking for mentorship. I myself, I'm happy to admit, I'm going to be turning 46 at the end of this week. I still need a mentor and often ask people to be my mentor. Does any of your advice change, Dr. Rose, for an older professional who's still looking for mentorship? I mean, certainly people make pretty drastic career changes that oftentimes you said that earlier, they might need to enlist a mentor to help them make those transitions.
And in their 40s, that's usually when that happens. I had a number of career coaching clients who had like a midlife crisis and said, I've been miserable for 20 years and I got stuck in this job because that's what I majored in. And I don't know why I picked it in the first place. Please, I got to do something different. So I think the process would be the same. There would be less of a power differential, I think, if you're older. So that might be easier. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing the exact same thing, whether you're 25 or 45 and saying, I would love to meet with you once a month over lunch just to talk about career possibilities or career changes, or, I have some questions that I think you'd be a perfect person to ask. You don't have to even use the word mentor if it makes you feel a little awkward because you're in your 40s. You could just phrase it differently. And again, I think that they can often be mutually beneficial relationships. So you may also be able to find a colleague who is at the same level but has something different to offer and say, can we get together and chat about work issues, discussions, challenges? And they may get just as much out of those discussions as you.
Well, Dr. Rose, this was amazing. I find myself just really kind of nodding with so many of the points that you made about how to ask somebody, how to approach somebody, and what that relationship should look like. So I'm just really thankful that you've, again, shared your time with our alumni and students around the world. I do want to ask you though, we've talked about coaching and you are available as a coach. Would you mind just sharing for a few minutes about some of the real sweet spot things that you feel like you can help people with?
Oh, I'd love to. Most people, it seems, who come to me seem to be that 40-ish. It's so interesting to me. Or younger, and they want to switch industries. And that's the biggest question. I want to switch careers. I want to switch industries. They don't know how to switch. Most people have a basic resume. I can make the resume better. I make it very strategic to help them switch. So how do they do that? That's the biggest question. And like I said, that can be in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, but they want to change. And so the most important thing I help them with is how to appear as an insider rather than an outsider, because people really are like that. They want to know you have experience in their industry, and they want to know you have experience doing exactly what they're looking for. So I have a lot of tips and I have a process to take people through so that they don't have to start all over again at an entry level salary or an entry level position if they want to move into something different.
Awesome. Well, again, I hope folks will check out your book, either on Amazon or at the BU bookstore. And you've listed here a couple of ways people can follow up with you, a Gmail address and your website. Thank you again so much for doing this for us. It's been really awesome to reconnect with you and have you back.
Thank you so much. I love talking to BU alumni. I miss Boston too. I need to come for a visit. I think another question or two popped in, and I think we have time for another one or two.
Sure, absolutely. Let's do it.
I see clicking. Let me open it again. Oh no, maybe it's just conversations.
Just people weighing into the chat saying thank you.
I'm so glad that it's been helpful.
Well, and at this point, I do want to also mention, we talked a little bit about BU Connects. And if you're not already familiar with it, BU Connects is a new platform that we introduced this year specifically to help people find mentors and find people that are willing to network with them to help them learn and gain new skills. And so if you've not joined, you can do it in minutes. My pro tip for you, just go to BU Connects. If you sign in using your LinkedIn information, you pull all that information over to create your profile in seconds, and then literally browse through a list of BU alumni and faculty and staff have said very clearly, I'm willing to be a mentor. And not only that, but they also identify the ways in which they're willing to help. I'm willing to review your resume. I'm willing to do some job shadowing. And so it's incredibly valuable. Also, once you get into that site, you'll see we've got some tips on how to use it. And there's actually a video guide that you can link to see a guided tour about how to use the mentoring section, how to make sure that you fill out your profile so that there's a mentoring algorithm that will match you with potential people that the system thinks that you might be interested to know. So again, I can't recommend it highly enough for people that are looking to, make a career transition, switch industries. This is an incredibly valuable resource. So make sure that you sign up for that. Again, buconnects.com. So thank you again, Rose. It's really awesome to have your support for the BU community.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, and thanks for the great questions, everyone.
And I also thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you to those of you who've donated and supported BU. I really appreciate your support. And I hope you all have a great day or a great evening wherever you might be. Take care.